as we both started making a lot of money together, I remember one day specifically, I got an email of his because I was on his email list, and he was doing something really cool, and I got really insecure. I think the biggest emotion I felt was embarrassment because I told the whole world, I'm gonna do this thing. This is something I call the identity crisis intersection, where you have a dream, the dream dies, and then you have a choice. You have a fork in the road. You can either go left, which is conform, that was stupid, I'm not gonna dream again, or you can dream again.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to be a part of the community where you can listen to more content to help you be a smarter, stronger, and better equipped, successful leader. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I would love and appreciate your support. It's amazing to me to watch the community grow and read all of your comments each and every week. I can't wait to go on the journey with you. Thank you so much, and it means the world to me. Welcome back to the Impactor of the Year podcast. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. I'm excited to be here with you today and share a conversation with a new friend, but a friend who so far in just the time that we've gotten to know each other has really impacted me a lot. He's shown me a way of his humble character that is a way to show up for others in the world. Well, let me introduce quickly my guest, Graham Cochrane. Graham is a multi-seven-figure entrepreneur in multiple businesses, TEDx and keynote speaker, best-selling author. He has the book, How to Get Paid for What You Know. He has another book coming out very soon, Rebel, as well. He has a podcast, The Graham Cochrane Show. It's a top, I'm going to get this right, 0.5% ranked podcast globally. Maybe you've heard him there. He and I got to know each other back last summer in 2023 at a John Maxwell event. He and I are both mentees and avid, I would say, followers of John. He is someone who I appreciate because not only is a leading voice in business and audio production, but as well, how to live a life in service and kindness to himself and his family, but then still live a life of impact. Graham, I'm ecstatic. I really am ecstatic to be having this conversation with you.
Oh, I'm honored, man. Your energy is infectious. Let's go.
It's about noon where I'm at, so I've been up for a few hours. I guess I still have that energy rolling through me. But you just recently shared a podcast about communication. And I want to kind of start there. We're communicating, we're interacting. And I want to hear from you in what you do. How critical is communication as a skill in the world today?
Oh man, it's like the number one skill. Whether it was like when I was starting a business, whether it was trying to even communicate to my family members, like why what I was doing or trying to do mattered because they were so confused why I was starting a blog in 2009 about audio recording. They're like, what I was trying to sell them on the idea that I think this could make money. I think this could take care of my family. That's like a communication skill that I struggled with. So being able to even communicate your ideas to the people that care about you or don't care about you, whether it's selling, or whether it's fundraising, whether it's just trying to change the world, like you have to be able to take what's inside of you. And this is like whether it's a business client of mine where I'll find that they have a great product or they have a great service. They've figured out the thing that they need to sell, and they're like, I'm not selling a lot of it. And I look at their communication, whether it's actual sales copy or the content they're creating around their brand that is hopefully going to drive leads to their business. And I realize, dude, what you're saying has nothing to do with what you're selling, or there's a giant disconnect. And so it's sad to see that communication can sometimes be the difference between someone selling millions of dollars of their product or raising millions of dollars for their charity or starting a global movement. You can have the best intentions and have the calling and the vision, but learning how to communicate that in such a way that people buy into it and get it, I mean, it's everything.
One of the things we talked about as we were getting ready to record today was insecurity. And I want to go there and say, do you believe what you just mentioned? You know, people trying to sell a business or your business in and of itself when you started in 2009, how much of that communication was fluttering or wavering because of the insecurity you had of like, can I even do this? Or people that feel like, oh, I need to just be so bold that I can do this, that is really a mask of that insecurity. And so their communication wavers because of it.
100%. Like, I feel like that's what people do is one or the other. So I am not the personality that will like be overly confident externally if I'm insecure. I just can't pull it off. Like I just don't want to, it just doesn't make sense to me. So the opposite will happen, which I think is sometimes to my detriment. It just depends. I find the really forward, confident people in the room, they get more attention, they get more respect, even if it's fake or even if it's a mask for insecurity. And I'm the one in the room that will just kind of fade away. I'm naturally an introvert. I'm a little bit more quiet unless I'm in my element or I'm a performer. Like I grew up as a theater kid, musician, speaker. Like I like to be on the stage, but actually it's nice. The more people, the better, because then I don't see individuals. I'm speaking to the idea of a person, and I'm safer that way and feel more comfortable. So I sometimes suffer from the insecurity because I go quiet. I don't like to talk about my accolades, or it's just not something that's natural for me. But so I waver because, like, yeah, to your point, when I was starting the business, it was fluttering. It was like, I don't have any confidence that this is going to work. I actually have no idea what I'm doing. And I really wish I did, because then I would be able to sell it and be passionate about it. I've had pivots in my career. I'm in a third pivot right now, it feels like. And every time it's like imposter syndrome comes back. And it's like, oh, I hate this feeling, because I like the feeling of knowing that what I'm doing, I have clarity around it and that it's working and people can see it. So I don't even have to convince them, because then we can get past all that and I can just do the work I feel called to do. But when I'm building something new again, and I'm having to sell people on what it is and cast vision again, or even sell myself on it, I don't like that personally, because those insecurities, they just drive me to be quiet, as opposed to the best side of me, which is bold and confident. And that usually comes from a place of belief. But when I'm new and it's a new thing, I'm not quite there yet, I'm usually more reserved and still on the sideline. So that's how I respond.
How do you navigate through that? Or how does someone lead with confidence through all of that? Because you've had to do it now.
When I'm focused on the thing that I haven't done yet, so writing books is a good example. I've got one book that came out 2 years ago, and How to Get Paid For It, you referenced it. The second one comes out this year, so I'm newer. I mean, even with a publisher and a first book that I feel like is numerically successful and people love the book, and it still feels new. I still I'm an author technically, but I still, I'm not John Maxwell. I'm not 90 books in or 100 books in or whatever. So that's still new. So if I focus on the new thing, there's not a lot of evidence that, well, you haven't done this for very long. So that's what leads me to insecurity on my worst days. When I look at who I am as a person and my identity in terms of not even the role, because I've had different roles, right? Worked in retail, worked in corporate, been an audio engineer, been an audio music YouTuber and content creator, then been a business coach. Those are all roles. But who is Graham in those roles, and who have I been? I'm also a husband. I'm also a father. When I look at the character of my person and the value that every year that goes by, I'm realizing, well, there's so much more value I can offer the world because of more experience and more things I've learned. If I look at that, who I actually am, and if you bring in, if you're a person of faith, there's a faith element. Like I'm a son of God. I have value because I'm made in the image of God, and all these things. Then if I look at that, that's what gives me a little bit more confidence, because I know, well, I'm newer at writing books, but I'm going to bring all of who I am into it, and I'm going to bring my unique spin on it, and hopefully there's some value that's created there. Then I feel a little bit more confident, because I'm looking at who I am and how I have been able to create impact in the past. Not necessarily the things I've done in the past. I don't want to lean on past achievements, other than what, to your point, impact, like in the name of your show. I've had impact in the past. I'm having impact currently. I'll have impact in the future, but it's just going to be in a different format or in a different medium or in a different capacity. I have to get comfortable with that, because I'm a person that's going to get bored real fast. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are that way. Like you've done a lot in your career, and I want to do new things. But if I want to do new things, I got to get comfortable with being the beginner again, but knowing that I'm not really a beginner. I'm a beginner in that I want to learn the right way to do this, but I'm bringing all those years of value creation and all those years of things I've learned into the new thing. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I look at it. If I look at the specifics, I get insecure because I haven't done it yet. But if I look at identity, I feel more confident.
Well, to me, there's an evolution there. And I've heard this recently. Somebody talked about some of the professional athletes that, they step on the court, they go out on the field, and there's this alter ego. I'm a different person. And now outside of that, with their family, with their friends, in preparation, they're someone different. And what, as I was thinking about, as you shared that and thinking about those individuals, And what I grasped from you is you created a structure where in all places, whether it's writing, whether it's producing content, whether it's business coaching, you're Graham. You're just Graham.
Yeah.
And you accepted all of it. And what I want to know is that a conscious effort in kind of this confidence and like, yeah, I maybe know I have insecurity, but that's okay. Was that a conscious effort, or did that just come about over years of success?
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, good. You're doing your job. It's been an evolution, right? It would be a lie to say that I had the confidence early on or always. Here's what I've discovered, Tyler, is for me, whenever I have my head down and I'm doing me, I'm in a better place. I'm confident because I look at the thing I want to bring into the world and I believe in it. Like we should in theory. And I think we all probably at some level believe in the thing we want to bring to the world. We're like, yeah, that's why we're excited about it or passionate. When I start to look around at what other people are doing, that's when I lose my confidence because of the way my personality is wired. So I'll give you an example. When I started my first business, The Recording Revolution, I didn't know anybody. I built it in isolation. I didn't even know what I was building. It's 2009, 2010. I was basically building a creator economy business. People call them influencers, like whatever you want to call it. I was creating content, building an audience, selling stuff. I didn't know that was a business, but it was what I was doing to figure out how to make money. And it was working from day one. It wasn't making a lot of money. It wasn't making any money at day one, but I could see it was impacting people. There was something there. So when my head was down, it was really exciting because I was just following the breadcrumbs, serving my audience, figuring out what they wanted. How can I monetize this? Building it. Then I became friends with a guy named Joe Gilder, and he was one of those people in my space doing the exact same thing. And we realized we could be friends. We should sync up and do something together. We started a podcast years ago, and then we started doing retreats, weekend retreats, and then we started a membership site together. He had his own business, I had my own, but we've made a lot of money together and become good friends. As we both started making a lot of money together, I remember one day specifically, I got an email of his because I was on his email list, and he was doing something really cool. And I got really insecure. And I caught myself being, oh my gosh, this is my friend and business partner. And I can't even handle seeing the cool thing he's doing because I realized, well, I'm not doing that. That's a really good idea. And I felt really insecure. So I got so like ashamed isn't the right word, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is an issue. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to unsubscribe from Joe's email list, even though he's my friend and we do business together. And I won't tell him. And then I was like, you know what? I probably should unsubscribe from a lot of other people's lists and socials and everything, YouTube's, because I just realized I don't do well. Even though I love learning from people, there comes a point where like, it's not learning anymore. It's just like, oh gosh, I didn't think of that. Or, oh gosh, that's a great video topic. Or, oh gosh, that's a great course idea. And so I just unsubscribed, went back to putting my head down, and then my confidence came back because I'm confident when I'm doing me and I'm doing what I feel like God's called me to do and I'm seeing the impact it's having. That's actually really easy to create confidence. It's when I look at other people, and this has not gone away. So I haven't actually gotten better at the comparison thing, but I've learned my weaknesses, and when I'm stronger is when I'm literally head down, ignore the rest of the world, and just deliver.
You shared a lot of very wise, impactful elements there. How did you know that when you put your head down and you were doing that, that was either your purpose or that was the thing? Because people can put their head down and they can just work and they can be blind. Okay, whoever's giving me accolades, I'll keep going that. But then sometimes they go down the path and they find themselves like, oh, well, this isn't what I wanted for me or my family. This is actually like torture. But I thought this is what I wanted. So is that something you had to wrestle with, or is that something that you had to figure out?
I mean, that's the ongoing journey, right? So my newest book, Rebel, Find Yourself by Not Following the Crowd, is literally about this. Like there's something that I call if this makes sense, the two-way mirror of meaning, which is you have like a two-way mirror, like at a police station where I can look through the glass on one side, but the other glass is reflective. The way I see the way we live lives is we're the person on the one side of the glass that's see-through. So when we look at the mirror to like, who am I? What am I about? But our side of the glass is see-through. So we don't actually see ourselves. We see everybody else on the other side. And so we're like, oh, maybe that's what I should do for a living. Maybe that's who I should marry. Maybe that's what weekends should look like or what kind of vacations I should take, because we're just seeing other people. We're not actually seeing ourselves. And then when we take it a step further and ask those people on the other side of the glass, what do you think I should do? What business do you think I should start? What do you think? They look back at us and they're seeing the reflective side. So they just see themselves and they say, well, you should do what we're doing. That's what makes sense to me. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I should do what you're doing. And it creates this reinforcement mechanism of I'm literally just getting my data from them and I'm copying them without realizing it. And so we end up sometimes, there's a scenario where you end up building a life that's not the life you wanted to live, or it's not the life that you're really designed to live. That's more of the language I believe in. I believe there's an alignment problem, which is what I talk about at the beginning of the book. That happens a lot of times where all of a sudden you wake up, you're 30, you're 40, you're 60, and you're like, wow, this is not the life I ever wanted to live. What you described is another scenario, which is you're building the business or building the life or doing the thing you wanted to do at one point, but now you no longer want to do that anymore. Or you're just discovering that this no longer excites me, or this actually, I hate it, but I used to like it. So it's not that you chose the wrong thing, it's just you're changing. That can be very scary for somebody, especially if you're very successful at what you do, especially if there's dollar signs attached to what you do, especially if other people are counting on you or they give you accolades for what you do, because you realize, oh, that's not who I am anymore. And it was true, it's no longer true. So then you have to go back to the beginning of the process of kind of what I teach through in the book of like getting back to dreaming again, getting back to vision, getting back to the inner story audit that you have to do. And it's just a new season, but most people won't even do that, because they were like, I already got successful once. Yeah. It's too much work. It's too much risk. But that's almost the adventure of not reinventing yourself. It's just the next chapter of the book. Literally, it's like you've grown, so it's okay to move into the next chapter.
One of the things that I love about this forum is having conversations and finding points that are so meaningful and impactful, and to say, let's go deep on it. There's this quote by Charles Horton Cooley, and he says, I am not what I think I am. And I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And this idea of what we've just uncovered in this, as this pursuit of, all right, I'm in place where I'm trying to serve and I'm trying to figure out a way. And you were coming from a path of much what I related to in 07, 08, 09. I'm that old, where like everything changed and I had to figure out a different way forward. And you start looking around and your insecurity tells you, well, do you have worth and value? And you fight through that and you had success, but you started to focus rather than compare in order. And that hit you again. And that hit you at another point. And one thing that I'm convinced is no one is exempt of that. No one is exempt of going through that journey that you shared, no matter what you do, whether you're the CEO of a Fortune 50 company or you're someone that started a audio engineering YouTube to serve people because people were trying to improve their production, whatever it may be. And so when I look at that whole span, I wonder what the common element is. The common element of how do you find that person? And you talk about it in your book, Rebel. How do you go back? So take me deeper in either how you've done it yourself or how you've seen others do it.
This is the risk of living, right? Is that are we going to go down the path that other people tell us to go down? Parents, father figures, mother figures, friends, or the culture at large, whatever the culture values, and that depends on where you live and how you're raised, whatever your culture values. Are we going to go down that prescribed path, or are we going to go down the path that we feel most aligns with what we actually want? Which sounds obvious, but most of us don't make decisions. Here's what I believe. Most of us abdicate our decision-making because it's just too dang hard. We're too exhausted. Especially if you have a family, if you have kids, right? You're so tired that we abdicate decision-making. This is why we have kids we have horrible parenting, horrible money management, horrible, we don't take care of our health. Our families are falling apart. A lot of things are falling apart because there's just too much decision-making to make at the end of the day that we're not going to put in the effort. So we abdicate our decisions to what does everybody else do? Okay, we'll just do that. And so we don't do this consciously. It's just what our brains do. So we're abdicating decision-making. The moment we do that, then we become like the culture that we're in. And so it's just easier. This is the constant current of conformity, right? Conformity is the enemy, and it takes effort to go against the grain and be a rebel, which is my premise, is that life becomes more satisfying and fulfilling and meaningful and impactful when you do it your own way. The problem is we don't know what our own way is because we haven't given the energy to look inside. Another reason we don't do this is, so it's either, energy, we're too tired, or we used to dream about things we wanted to do or be or what was exciting to us. We used to lean into desire or dreams, if you don't like that language, dreaming, desire, what we wanted when we were kids, because it was easy, it was natural, right? And then because of the conformity, or because if you're like me, you have a dream that dies. Like my dream, like big capital D dream, was to be a famous rock star, right? So I was a theater kid, I was on stage, and all my friends
like
were musicians,
hairband rock star, or I just need a better picture there, Graham. I just need a little bit more.
I bleached blonde my hair, I wore pleather pants, and I rocked the heck out. Okay. So
thank you for that.
You're welcome. That's how I won my wife over in college. It worked for that at least. But I would say, like, when everyone else who was around me was musicians, but then they decided to become investment bankers or lawyers and get a real job, I was the one remaining that was like, no, A, that sounds awful to me if I was even smart enough to do those jobs, but B, I feel like I have a shot. I don't know how famous I'll be or how big it'll be, but I feel like this is my best shot at doing something meaningful in the world, is to pursue music. And I had other people that said the same thing. So my whole point is I worked hard at that dream, age 22, I had made a record, was shopping it around to labels. No real solid deals were turning up, only development deals, which means we'll sign you, but we won't put any money behind you. We'll see how you do. And I was like, look, I'm getting married soon. I met my wife young. I was like, I actually need like an advance. I need something. Like, I'm going to go all in on this. I can't do this on the side. And when I realized that wasn't going to happen, I had a tough decision to make, which was either keep pursuing it, making no money, and drag my wife into it, or man up and get a job and take care of her. So I did that. And when that happened, I knew I did the right thing, air quotes, but my soul died a little bit inside. And I gave up on dreaming. I was like, that's stupid, that's foolish. I think the biggest emotion I felt was embarrassment, because I told the whole world, I'm gonna do this thing. And then when people asked, hey, did you get the deal? Nope. I'm working at a radio station selling advertising for, KC 101, whatever the country station was in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I was like, dude, I am never going to follow a dream again, because I'm not going to get burned like that again. I'm just going to keep my head down, live a normal life, pay my taxes, go to church, raise kids, and be a good husband, and try to find some happiness along the way. And that, obviously that didn't work. Like, I had a great wife and a great life, but like it ate me up inside. So that's some people's story where they're like, I had a dream die. And that dream might not be like a rock star dream. A lot of times it's like, I had a relationship dream die. We got divorced. I had a kid literally die. I've lost a child. Like, I'm never going to hope for a child again. Whatever it is, you got laid off 2008. A lot of people's careers were dismantled. Like, wow, forget doing what I love. So the point is it's either abdicating decision-making because it's exhausted to figure out who you are and what you care about, or it's you've been burned by your own dreams. You're like, dreaming is foolish, dreaming is stupid. And so you don't. And so when you don't dream, following your dreams isn't the point of life, but dreaming is a giant clue, a mega clue as to how you're wired, what lights you up, the types of environments you should be in, the types of things you should pursue, because it's the way you were designed. We have a designer, I believe. And it's like, man, you'll have more impact if you start to just live in alignment with your design, which is tied to your desires. So it's not going to be the whole picture, but it's a great starting point. And that's what I hope and I coach people to try to do is, can we get to a place, depending on where your story is, that you can dream again? This is something I call the identity crisis intersection, where you have a dream, the dream dies, and then you have a choice. You have a fork in the road. You're at an intersection. You can either go left, which is conform, go right back to conforming. That was stupid. I'm not going to dream again. That was me for 4 years after the rock star dream died. Or you can dream again. Maybe it's the same dream, but you do it another shot. Maybe it's a different version of the dream. Like, you can dream again. That's your other choice. You don't have to make that choice, but it is a choice. And the people that I think find more fulfillment in life are willing to dream again, even after failures or crushed dreams, because they know if I follow that desire mechanism, it'll get me at least closer to the way I was wired. And there's going to be a lot more synergy there for impact, fulfillment, and satisfaction.
Wow. And I say that because how relatable that is to me. To me and what I've been through. But I say that because there's like a workout, right? You get down with a workout, you do this real intense set, and then you're like, all right, let's stop. What did I just accomplish? And I feel like that moment's right here. It's like we talk about this abdication. And there's almost this element, abdication leads to conformity. Well, why do we have conformity? Well, conformity comes because our dream dies, and therefore we must follow along with everyone else. And even if I circle all the way back to the start of our conversation and this idea about communication, and why do we struggle in communication? And I think it ties into all of this is because we have broken dreams. And so we're sitting here saying, well, my dream is broken, so therefore I'm not going to have passion and excitement and communicate with this energy about what's possible because I've gone through the rock star stage and said, you're not good enough. And so therefore I just abdicate all of that and I'll just go through the motions. So I say all of that and kind of we're taking a drink right after this workout and saying, how do we break free? How do we get away from that gravitational pull? Is it just taking one step? Is it how do we get away from that conformation, that conformity? So we start to be authentic. And I believe the communication, the credibility comes through authenticity. So again, how do we break free from that to be the holistic Graham that shows up and people are like, man, I really like that guy.
Yeah, so I have a 5-part framework that there's a way I think about it, and it kind of goes from 30,000 foot view down, and it's going to be overly simplistic because this is deep inner work, right? So it's not going to be like check the boxes and you're done. But it spells out rebel, so it's an easy acronym to remember. R is for resolve to dream again. Hence the book, and it is a resolution. Like I will commit to getting back to understanding what I even desire and dream about, and so I have exercise in the book there of just getting honest with what are something you can just do even on your own is like listing out 50 dreams you have, which the first time I did this, it took me a week because I got through 3. I was like, there's nothing else I want. And there's a lot of inner work I've had to do of even allowing myself to desire things because I'm a person that does the right thing, not what I want to do. So it just depends. Some people, like my oldest daughter, took her through it. She's like, I can come up with 1,000 things I want. My youngest daughter, she's like, I don't know. So it probably depends. So 50 things you want to do, be, or have. They're just a list just to get things flowing. And then I like to circle the top 10. Like if you could only have 10 of these 50, what would they be? Which really forces you to think, and then why. And it's just getting some self-awareness. So dreaming is like 30,000 foot view, resolve to dream again. But then we got to get more specific. E in the Rebel is establishing a vision, right? Establishing like the exact outcomes you want in life. I don't love outcome-driven living because we can get focused on the outcomes, which comes to the last part of the process. But it's you have to start with an outcome that you want. That's part of conformity. We conform because if you don't make a decision to go somewhere, you're going to go with wherever conformity takes you. And you're going to end up down the river because it's a current and it's moving. So you got to move in a direction. So this is where we start to look at, I like a 3-year vision. 10 years is too long. I'll be a completely different person in a decade. 1 year is too short because it's going to take some time to do some of the things. But getting clear on who you want to be, what you want life to look like. This is basic vision casting stuff. But some people have never done it. Or if you haven't done it in a while, you might want to get honest about what does that look like. So you're establishing that vision. The B is breaking these negative thoughts, habits, and patterns that are holding you back from being who you really are. So this is a process I call having an inner story audit, where you're looking at the inner language that you're telling yourself, the things you're believing without realizing it, your inner programming. Basic stuff here of like, what am I actually telling myself that's actually not true? And what could be as true or truer than that statement? So it's taking an audit of your thoughts, getting it on paper. When you do that, you see it in front of you. It's shocking sometimes the things that we say to ourselves or about ourselves or believe. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for myself. So you're breaking the inner thoughts because you can't add new to bad code. You can't build on bad code. You got to sometimes break a piece of software and build it from the ground up. That's where then the second E is establishing new thoughts, and new that you want to believe. And so this is really getting into how do you prime and protect your day. My morning routine in terms of like what I'm doing in my quiet time or the time we're in the house is quiet. It's an acronym called WAIT. It's really, so before you jump into the day, like WAIT. So it's wisdom. Start with reading wisdom literature. Like I'll read the Bible, but this, if you're into Stoicism or if you're into anything ancient, anything that's not current, because if you're getting all your wisdom from current stuff, like it's going to be dripping with the conformity of the day. It's like you got to read something that's old, right? So wisdom is the W. A is affirmation. So affirming the new beliefs and the new thoughts and the new vision you're trying to cast in your life, like writing it out and just seeing it again, like I'm a person that's this, or this is what I'm shooting for, just getting it on paper. I is imagination. I think one of the most powerful things I've been able to do in the last 12 months in that time in the morning is actually pre-experience things. So if it's my new book, Rebel, coming out, like I'm imagining, it on the shelves at Barnes & Noble. I'm imagining people reading it and like underlining the parts that helped me. I'm imagining the message getting out there. And it just allows me to start to a little bit of NLP stuff of just neuro-linguistic programming of creating new pathways of, man, this book is going to impact a lot of people. And I'm like pre-experiencing that. So I do a little bit of imagination. Sometimes if it's a specific thing, I gave a TED talk last year and I was really scared and really nervous. So I pre-experienced myself doing it, like, okay, I'm saying it, people are going to get it. And so I feel a little more comfortable. And then T is thankfulness. Like we all know the power of gratitude. I always end with gratitude. Some people start there. I like it to be the last thing I do in my time in the morning before I go out. Because because I'm a person that's never content. And so I like to end with, look at how awesome your life is right now, right? And even the small things. And so WAIT, W-A-I-T, I'll start the day there. That's part of that fourth thing is like establishing these new thoughts. That helps me. And then the final part, L, is the most important one of them all in the way, is letting go of other people's opinions and your own specific outcomes. Letting go of opinions and outcomes. You have to, and I have to, create my own value systems. Like I literally help people in the book write their own values, what you actually value. Because if you don't have that right, you're just going to, Tyler seems to value this. Like maybe I should do that because he seems like a happy, successful guy. And that might not be a bad value, but maybe it's not one of your core ones. So letting go of other people's opinions and forming your own deep-seated values. And then this is the irony. My friend John Gordon has this great line. If you love the process, you'll love what the process produces. And I'm the guy that loves what the process produces. I want to focus on the producing, like the outcome. And he's like, no, you have to stop focusing on the outcome and focus on the process and love it. Make sure you're doing the process that you love, because then it will lead to an outcome you like. So don't be too results driven, which I am. I'm very much a futurist. I'm very much like outcomes person. So we established them earlier, but then you have to let them go because you're at least moving in the right direction because you've done some of that inner work. So that's the process that I take people through in the book. My experience is that depending on your background, you're going to really struggle with one of those 5 more than the other. Sure. And the other ones might be like, oh yeah, I've done some of this work. This is easy. But there's probably that one part in that process where you're like, man, this is where my roadblock is. And for some people, it's the first one. It's dreaming. They're like, I can't. And that was me for a long time. I could not dream again. But it's the process. And what the point of this is, right? It's not even personal development to be this awesome mega version of you. It's literally stripping away all the crap so that you're just becoming the you that's already been there all along. Like you were born the way you are. You're wonderful the way you are. And then we've added all this crap from the world and our upbringing and our friends and our own mistakes. And this is the work of shedding all of that. So we, like the language in the book I say, is to find yourself again. Like it's there. You're not creating yourself. You're not making an avatar. You're you, and you are amazing, but not until you find out who you are. And so it's a rediscovery, if that makes sense.
This has been so good. Like if I could imagine what we would talk about today, I texted you early this morning. I said, dude, I'm excited just to catch up, have this conversation. It has been fulfilling thus far for me. Hopefully everyone listening in. How did you find this framework? How did you fall upon the WAIT and the Rebel and understand, okay, that's the way for me to be the confident, secure, servant-minded, humble Graham?
The real answer is God told me. So if you're not a person of faith, you'll be like, I don't like that. It was literally a moment. The language I use is like it was a download. And people will say like, Erwin McManus has a great, he has so much great stuff, but he said one time he had an epiphany about how to have more epiphanies, which I thought was just a funny line. But it's almost like an epiphany. When you've been in that space where you've had a great idea or you have a solution that just comes to you and you didn't work it out. It just came to you one day. And a lot of times that happens to us, right? Where you just give up trying to solve the thing. And when you're relaxed or you're out for a walk or you're in the shower, like for me, it's both of those places, or you're at by a body of water. When I see like I was walking by the bay here in Tampa, I go for like a nice 6-mile walk every other day. And it's just like water. When I see the water, I just, my head clears. So whenever you've had an epiphany, like, oh my gosh, this is the solution. This book came to me like that. I call it a download. I feel like the Holy Spirit gave it to me, and it came in 3 waves. One was the name, Rebel, and I have to credit John Gordon I was in a session with him. I was like, bro, can you help me think about, I was moving into more speaking. I'm like, tell me how to be a speaker. And he was like, no, like, let's stop talking about speaking. Let's talk about your next book. What's the message of your next book? I was like, I don't know. I just wrote a book. Can't I be happy with that first book? And he was really pressing me on
the guy who turns them out in like days.
I know this guy's a beast. He's got like 3 more coming out this year. I'm like, slow down. He really pressed me on the message of my new book. And so it was in that day where he was asking me a bunch of questions. He was asking me about my life. And I credit him for the title of the book because I was telling him about my life. He's like, oh my gosh, you're a rebel. Like that's the common theme. You don't do what people tell you to do. I'm like, that's language I've never used about myself. But now that I'm thinking about it real time, you're 100% right. I can see. And so he gave me that language. And the moment that word dropped, I was like, there's something here. We brainstormed it. And a day later, I swear I got the framework came to me and I tested it, right? Because the framework, it just came to me. I was like, oh, that's cute, but it has to be real. And so I started to stress test it with myself, back test it to the way I've experienced life, test it with clients. I was like, this is literally a way, not the only way to do this work, but it is a way that makes so much sense. And so I pitched it to my publisher and I was like, that'll be another test. If they buy into it, then we'll do this thing. And they're like, let's do it. When can the manuscript be due? And I was like, oh crap. Like I was like, guys, I don't really this is new material. It was a download. So for me, this is going back, let's go full circle. Here is a point of full transparency, vulnerability, and security. Writing this book was the hardest thing I've ever done. It's only my second book, but it was way harder than the first one. But it's this, I've created courses and content for 14 years. Hardest content I've ever created because it's new. Like it's new because it's alien. It came to me from outside of me. And so the moment I started to sit down and write after the excitement wore off, I was like, oh man, who am I to write this book? Because this has not been the message I've been living, although this has been my life. But I haven't been teaching this message, and I didn't discover it in a lab somewhere and test it on thousands of clients, and now I'm putting it in a book, which is how I felt like my first book was. So the imposter syndrome was through the roof because I both had like, this message has to get out there in the world, but I can't be the guy to do it. But then it's like, but I'm the guy that God gave it to, but I don't know because this is new to me. And so this was the hardest thing I've ever created because of the disconnect. And then the other fear was, it might be a good idea, but is this a whole book? Is this a concrete book? Will it be coherent? So I was like, I gave the manuscript to the editor. I didn't even preface it. I was like, we can work on this if you need me to change some things. And when she came back and she said, this is the best thing I've read in a long time, or like, this is a beautiful framework. This makes so much sense. It's so well organized. Like that's like her biggest thing. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe there's something here. So long story short, bro, it was an instant download from the Lord. I've been discovering the book as I wrote it. It's the book I've needed to read myself because I'm like coaching myself through the book that I wrote, which is very meta. And as it's all done now and it's, we're getting it launched out this year and I read it and I see it as a whole thing. It's either this is just like me, I'm in my head and I think it's a great book, or this is going to be huge because it just came from nowhere and it makes so much sense. And I feel like everybody is struggling with this in some sphere of their life. I'm just scared to death to be the messenger of it because this is not what my business is all about. This is not what my offers are tied to. I've like literally, I'm going all in on what I feel like God's calling me to do because I feel the burden of the message. But I'm swinging for the fences, so we'll see if it's right. But that's the answer to the question. That's where the book came from.
Thank you for sharing that. As you noticed, you might have said a word or two there, and I had a facial response. I told you this in the pre-open. Your book, How to Get Paid for What You Know, has nothing to do with someone wanting to start their own business. It has everything to do with everyone in every position getting paid for what they know. What does that mean? In my mind, that's just being a rebel and accepting it. So you are the perfect person. Absolutely. And one thing that I've learned from our mentor, and John Maxwell, and I've spent a little bit more time intimately with him over the last few years. The best lesson you will ever teach is the one that you're learning and you're willing to take people with you. Once you become an expert, all of a sudden it's old news. And so you teaching it right now, dude, it's amazing. I think back about this as far as rebel, and this is just me affirming you and appreciating this space that we get to have together. But a rebel is someone that's opposing or taking arms against a government or ruler. It's saying that, no, I don't want that conformity that you talked about earlier. I don't want to communicate and fall into that abdication. And then all of a sudden, who am I? There's no authenticity here. And, as we think about this whole idea and your faith and just like, who's a rebel that's impacted our life? Who sacrificially said what needed to be said, not for his gain, but for everyone else. And that was Jesus. I believe that entirely. And so when you look at this, I love it. I love it because you are the perfect person, because you're willing to say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's go through what I've gone through and that insecurity that you've shared, and being so willing to be open in what your platforms, but not only here with me, and say, yeah, this is what I've had to deal with. I think as a society, we need more people that are willing to say, okay, yeah, I am a rebel. I've had to work through this, and I'm willing to do it with you because I'm not the expert. That's just my quick little 45-second input.
Thank you. I've received that, man. I believe in divine timing, and I feel like this conversation is good for me today. This is so funny. When you come from a marketing background and a business background, you're almost limited by that background of everything is, what's the problem? What's the audience? So it's like, I'll put those frameworks back on this new thing, which is, marketing is important. It's communication is important. We talked about that, but this feels bigger. This is like, I need to make sure that this is a message. Like I'm not going to waste my time writing a book and talking about something that's not going to impact people's lives. Like there's just too many books out there like that are garbage. Like I don't want to add to the noise. So I just appreciate that that this content is resonating with you. It feels real and near to my heart. It feels like more like the most important work I could probably do. But that's the scary thing, is like, ooh, I don't know, man. Because like this is stepping into uncharted territory, but it feels like a message that the world needs and I need. So like, let's go. So thank you.
I think that's what impactful people are willing to do. It's, the start. Hey, how do you find authenticity and communicate that actually connects with people? How are you willing to lead and not abdicate? How are you willing to go through and embrace the struggles and understand, hey, it's okay, I'm getting better, and then be open to these situations? Man, that to me is what's exciting. I want to wrap up here, and I want to ask one final thing, and I want to kind of, take a moment here. As you look forward, as you're thinking about what you just shared, that vulnerability of, I don't know how I'm going to get this forward, is what are you going to do from an exercises point of view to keep yourself fresh and that you're communicating from your heart? Because I think that's what will resonate.
I love what Rory Vaden says, right? That you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. When I think about that statement, and I would agree with that. I think many of us are multi-gifted and could serve a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And that's part of what I've been doing for years, is helping people see that you can make a living and make an impact serving people in an area that you think is common to you because it's uncommon to somebody else and they want to learn it. But I think the most powerful way you could serve somebody is to go back in time and serve the person you once were. And what was that struggle? And so for me, I guess I didn't even want to own. Like a lot of times, this is common too. The person we once were, we don't want to go back and revisit. Like I don't want to think about how painful that was, whatever that was. So like, I was on a webinar today with a gal who she's a speaker, and she speaks on anxiety to teenagers. And she's made a great career and feels called to this work. But I'm sure it was painful for her to think about, do I really want to go back and talk about anxiety and tell my story of being anxious as a teenager? But it's going to help a ton of teens, but it involves going back in time. And I think, to your question, that's going to be the thing that the exercise that I need to hold on to is go back to that 22-year-old Graham whose dream just died of being a rock star. And then the identity, like, that's the thing with dreams, is they're not just a dream. Like, our identity is always attached to that dream somehow. So if the dream dies, our identity dies or seems to die. And so that's why it's so painful, whether it's an identity in a relationship or an identity in a career or an identity in a passion or a pursuit, like, or a title, like that's painful. And so for me to go back and say, what does that 22-year-old Graham need? What's he feeling? If he heard a keynote today, if he read a book today, if he listened to a podcast today, and he heard these truths, if someone spoke the truth to him about this, what would that do for him? How would that change his life? How would that impact? Like, if I think about that, bro, confidence all day long. Like, let's go, because like that's meaningful and that's impactful. If I think about anything else, you could punch holes in it, and then you're like, oh, it's not perfect yet, or oh, I don't know about this. But that's probably what I need to be doing over the next 6 to 12 months as I get this message birthed out into the world.
I love it. Where can people learn more about you? Where can they learn more about Rebel and your work?
Yeah, so GrahamCochrane.com. On Instagram, it's at @theGrahamCochrane. That's where everything's going to be. The book will be available for pre-order within days, weeks probably. So the book is Rebel. Find yourself by not following the crowd.
You can actually order it today. I did. Man, thank you so much. And thank you to all the viewers, listeners. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can help more people find impactful leaders like Graham by rating and reviewing each episode. Until next time, choose to lead with impact. Thank you so much for being here.